Huge thanks to our sponsors for making ResolveCon 24 possible. Motion VFX makes the best plugins for DaVinci Resolve. They have plugins to quickly add beautiful graphics to any kind of project you're working on, and they're compatible with both Mac and Windows. And right now you can get their mHello 3D for free. This is a pack of super useful 3D shapes that you can add to any video and take your visuals up a notch. Just click right here or the link in the description. And of course, ResolveCon would not be possible without Blackmagic Design. They just came out with the full release of DaVinci Resolve 19. For editing, color, effects, and audio, it's pretty much everything you need to make any kind of project in DaVinci Resolve. You can download DaVinci Resolve 19 right here or in the link in the description.
Welcome everybody to this course here. We're talking about how to make your dialogue sound professional in Fairlight. And if you're not working with your audio, you have to, right? Your video can look awesome, but if it doesn't sound good, people aren't going to want to watch it. Or if they do, they might click away from it quicker than if you have awesome audio. So when it comes to audio, there's a lot of things we can think about, a lot of things we can do, but I want to kind of just cover my process today of how I start to think about my audio when I'm working on a project here in Resolve. When it comes to dialogue, my thought process, some of the tools that I use, and what we can do to just make our audio sound the best that we can. Now, you may not always have a great set of audio to start with, but you want to get the best that you can right from the beginning. So that's where we need to start. We need to talk about recording, right? When you're recording your audio, whether you're recording just straight into a camera with no external microphone, it's not going to be great, but it's usable. And actually, we have a sample, if you download the samples that we're going to use, that was just recorded right into camera. Then you might have a microphone that's a little bit better, kind of like this guy, right? Does a little bit better job. Then maybe you upgrade to something that's a little bigger, like this. Maybe you even have a lav mic like this. These little guys, you can put the lav mic on there. You can clip these things on your shirt. So those might be good options if you're out and about. If you're in a studio, maybe you've got something like this. Maybe you've got a shotgun mic like this. All of them are going to give you different results when you record your audio. But consistent among all of those different types of microphones would be your audio levels. So whether you're recording directly into camera, whether you're recording on an external recorder or into your computer, you want to make sure that you've got good audio levels when you're recording to start with. We want to make sure that we're not peaking, that we're not losing any of our audio because our levels are too high. We don't want it to be too low where we don't hear enough of like the quieter parts of our audio. So really important to set good audio levels in your camera when you're recording, because if you start with garbage, there's a good chance you might end up with garbage. Although we can make it better, but you want to start with the best that you can when you're recording. So I've got a couple examples that we can take a look at here that you should have been able to download through the download link that I think you find, I don't know if it's below this video or on the ResolveCon site. I'm sure you guys found it already. But we're going to take a look at those. And one other thing I want to mention is when you're doing your recording right into your camera, your computer, your external device, whatever it may be, you want to try and record your audio in a mono format. Now, it can go to your right and left channels, but ideally you want it to be a mono format, not a stereo. And that's because if you have ever recorded on like your phone and you notice if you go from side to side, you can hear it going back and forth. Well, that might not be the best way to present our audio in our videos. So ideally, record mono if you can. If you can't, we can fix that in Resolve. But just something to keep in mind if you have that option to record in a mono format when you're recording your audio to start with. The other thing that's going to matter as we get into Resolve here is your listening device, right? Are you using headphones? Are you using a phone? Are you using laptop speakers? Are you using monitor speakers? The better your speakers, the more you're going to be able to hear the nuanced things that we're going to do when we work with our audio. So that's something to keep in mind. Use what you got. I'm not saying you have to go out and buy any of this stuff. I say use what you got. Use some of the tips and techniques that we're going to talk about and just try and make your audio sound better than what it is, when you record it. Even if you don't have any kind of equipment, you're just recording your camera, you can still work with it and make it sound better. So let's jump over into DaVinci Resolve here. So in here, in the project that you downloaded, if you have it, we have a timeline that's blank right now. We've got several files that we're going to take a look at. We have one that is just recorded right into the camera, one that uses an on-camera microphone, one that uses a lav mic, and then we've got a studio sample. So when it comes to your audio, the first thing is obviously get all your stuff into Resolve, right? Organize it how you'd like, get them into Resolve. Now, the next thing that I like to do is if I recorded my audio externally, which in this case, I only did for my studio mic, right? I recorded a little bit of scratch audio on the camera you're watching me on, and then I recorded my audio externally as well. Well, I want to sync up my good audio with my good video clip. And there's a couple of different ways that we can do that. If you caught Mr. Alex Tech's session this morning, you saw that you can just come into your bin right here, right click, choose auto sync audio, select waveform. Now, generally I use waveform. I don't really use timecode at all. So I'm going to select waveform. You can leave the other stuff as it is and go ahead and hit sync. Resolve's going to think, do its thing. Now, there's no sync for these options or these other clips here. So I can just hit OK, and it just found the clip that it matched up with. So that's pretty sweet, quick and easy. You don't even have to select anything. And if you wanted to double check just to make sure you got it right, you can select your video clip, right click, and go to clip attributes. That's going to open this window up here. You can click on audio. And then right here, we've got source channel. And right now you can see it says linked 1 and linked 2. So now we know our good audio is linked up and synced up with our video footage. And if we click the little drop down, you can see that you still have your original audio there if you ever need to go back to it for any reason. It doesn't remove it. It doesn't delete it. It's still there if you need to go back to it. Now, we could change our format here to a mono, but I'm going to worry about that in a few minutes here, and we'll just talk a little bit more about that in a bit. So I'm going to hit OK. Now, the other way, if you had multiple clips in your bin right here like we do, you could select both clips using your Command or Control key, select them both, then right-click and go to Auto Sync Audio. And that's going to do the same thing, right? But it'll only use those two clips. You won't get an error message that says, oh, it didn't work. The other way that you can sync up your clips, because let's say maybe you don't have a good sync point, right? For me, a lot of times I always, give a good clap in the beginning of my clips. You can see it right down here, these little spikes, right? That's what Resolve can see really quick and easy between both the video and the audio to sync it up. But let's say maybe you don't have that and Resolve's having a little trouble syncing it up. I like to go over to the media pool, and here's what you can do. This is kind of cool. So in our media pool, or sorry, media tab, not media pool, media tab. We want to come over and make sure you've got your audio section open here. Click on the waveform, and I want to sync these up. Now, I just unsynced them real quick, but let's say we have our video right here, and I've got my good audio that I want to sync up, but Resolve isn't doing a good job. I can click, hold, and drag this over into the waveform section, and now I've got two different things I can work with. And what I want to do is come back and find, in this case, I have a clap to sync to, so I want to find a point that I can sync to. So right here is where the good audio clap is. But if you didn't have a clap, you would find something else where you can line up the audio clip and the video clip. And then on the video clip, I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to look for the clap. Find it. Where is it? Right here. So I'm going to use my arrow keys to get right to the first clap here. Right. So right there. And now, once these are in the spot that I want to link them or sync them up, I can just hit this little link, unlink audio right there. Boom, now they're set and they're good to go. So let's jump back into the edit tab. Now let's go ahead, and the next thing that I like to do is bring all of my audio or dialogue, in this case, into the timeline. So I'm going to just grab my clips, drop them in the timeline, all of our clips here, including our studio clip. So when we look at our timeline, now we've got 4 different clips here. And when it comes to working with your audio, you really want to separate out your audio. And this is important because each type of audio from each microphone, each talent or person that's being recorded, and each location are all going to need a little different treatment for the audio to sound the best that it can. So ideally, what you want to do is put all of these audio tracks in or clips into a separate track. So we can do that right here in the edit tab real quick. I'm just going to do it here because you're probably dumping all of your video and audio into your timeline in the edit tab. So to do it real quick, you can just select just your audio clip by holding the Option key on a Mac or Alt key on a PC, click it, and then if I hold the Option or Alt key again, boom, I can click the down arrow and it'll just drop it down a track. So I'm going to do that to all of these guys, put them in their own track, pop them down. So now we've got each audio type, right? Each different microphone, location, and I'm the same guy in all the video clips, but we've got the locations and the microphones separated. Now, if I had the same microphone, but it was different locations, I'd probably want to put that in its own track too, because it may need some different treatment, right? It may not be the same settings that I need for all of, that particular microphone if it's in different locations. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Now, when it comes to our audio tracks here, remember we talked about recording in mono, right? So you can see now that our tracks are set up as stereo tracks, right? We can see the 2.0 here that tells us they're stereo, and we actually want to change them to mono. So we could just right-click on them, change track type to, and go to mono. And we could just do that for each one of our tracks here. And this is just going to make sure that if they were recorded in stereo, we don't have like wavering back and forth, right? We can choose one of the channels, right or left, and make sure that, the audio's coming through good and that, whoever's watching our video is going to be able to hear it. So now we can just double check them by playing through it a little bit, make sure it sounds the way it should, right? So we're just going to check these real quick.
5D Mark IV, no external.
Okay.
4. This is the second sample that you'll get.
Okay, I hear that in mono, both sides, both speakers. Now this one, I don't hear anything. What's going on there? Well, if we come and select our clip, we can right-click, go to Clip Attributes. Now, in our Clip Attributes, it's still set up as a stereo track. Now, when you use a lav mic like one of these guys, this particular set can record 2 channels, right? So it can record one person to a right channel and another microphone to the left channel. By default, when I set up a mono track here and I used a microphone like this that only records to one side, right? In this case, it's going to go to the left side. So I'm not hearing anything. So what I need to do is tell Resolve, hey, use the right side where that audio was recorded. So I'm just going to go ahead and choose mono and then change this to embedded 2. Click OK, and we should be good.
We're using a lav mic here, which is what I would do. I wouldn't stick this.
So now we can hear it mono in both sides, both right and left channels. It's coming out clear. We can hear it. So if you ever run into a problem where you have a mono track and you see your waveforms there, you're like, I don't hear anything. What's going on? That could be your problem right there. And then our last clip here, directly into the C100. In studio, it sounds pretty good. All right, now we are going to jump over into Fairlight. And a lot of the things we're going to start off doing here in Fairlight can be done here in the Edit tab. But I'm showing you how to make it pro in Fairlight, right? So we're going to jump into Fairlight. But a lot of things can be done right here in the Edit tab. Or the Cut tab, but I pretty much use the Edit tab. Don't use the Cut tab too much. So musical notes at the bottom, jump over into Fairlight. Zoom our full timeline here. I like to use Shift-Z. That'll just zoom everything. And then if I hold the Shift key, I can use my middle mouse wheel. I think somebody talked about that earlier. Casey, you got a video on that, right? Middle mouse wheel. Everything you need to know about a 3-button mouse wheel. I think I saw that earlier. But you can use your middle mouse wheel to zoom vertically and hold the Shift key, and you'll zoom like that. So first thing that I like to do is start off with whatever piece of audio that you want. We're going to start with this one, which happens to be the audio recorded in here without a microphone, just directly into the 5D Mark IV there. And the process we're going to go through here is what I would do for all of my audio clips. First thing that I like to do is start by setting my levels. And we want to have some good levels for our audio, so we've got a good base point to start from as we go ahead and work with other things like noise reduction, dynamics, EQ, some effects. We need to start at a good point. Now, typically, I'm going to recommend that you set your audio clips to about -10 dB. Now, how do we know where that is? If we look at our clip, we can play through our clip, and to see where our levels are actually falling, we're going to want to use the mixer. So if you don't see the mixer, it's right here. You're going to want to open that up. And down here in the mixer, we can see that we've got numbers, and right here is a 10. That's -10 dB. So we want to get our audio around that -10 dB. And that's going to give us a good starting point where we've got enough headroom. So if we make things louder, we've got space. We're not going to peak. Or, if it's a little below that, anything that's quiet, we should be able to hear it, assuming you had good levels when you started recording. And if I forget if I forgot to mention, when you're recording, I try to record and get levels that are around minus 18 dB, maybe minus 15 to minus 18 dB if your recording device has numbered levels. Sometimes on, cameras like this, it just has like a bar and like a green dot or whatever. So you want to try and get around that maybe. But I like to go around minus 18 to minus 15 dB just so I've got room to play with it when I get it in Resolve. Once it's in Resolve, I like to set it around minus 10 dB. Now, there are a few ways that we can set our levels. One way is to come to our clip, and if I just zoom in a little bit here, we can see we've got this white line on the clip, and this is called your gain line. So I can click, hold, and drag this up, and it's going to increase the volume or the levels of my audio clip. If I drag it down, it's going to decrease it. So you notice it makes like some pretty big jumps there, right? If you hold your shift key, you can go a lot more finely on those dB levels, right? You can go 0.1 dB at a time versus if I let go of shift, it's really hard to go 0.1 dB. So you can adjust your levels there. You can also adjust them in the inspector. So if I open the inspector and I just select my clip, not my track, just my clip, right here we've got volume. If we're in the audio tab, volume right here. I can move it up and down, either raise it or lower it, and it's the exact same thing as using this gain line. Just makes it a little quicker to do it right on the clip, I think. And that way you can leave the inspector closed, got a little more real estate and more room on your screen. Now, the other way that you can adjust the volume or the levels of your audio is down here using the fader. So you can boost up your fader or drop it down, and as we move it down here, you can also see over here, it's going to change that as well. So I can click, hold, and drag up and down here. It also moves the fader down in the mixer. Now, I recommend that you set the level of the clip first by using the gain line or the volume in the inspector, because I like to use the faders at the end of the process to blend everything together. So it's really important that you get some good levels to start with. So let's get some good levels on this clip and start working with our audio. Another thing that I like to do as we play through our clip is loop our audio so that I don't have to play through it, stop, go back, play through it, stop, go back. I don't want to do that. I just want it to play through. So we've got a few ways that I can play through our clip. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to come to the beginning of my clip, press I for an in point, go to the end of my clip, press O for an out point. You can also use your range tool here and then just make a selection on the timeline, wherever you'd like. It'll automatically set the in and out points for you if I go like that. So in this case, I want the whole clip. I can just click on the clip. It'll select and set in points and out points for the entire clip. So either way works just fine. And then you want to make sure you've got your loop button on here. And what it's going to do is just play through this audio. When it gets to the end, it'll play through the beginning, and it'll keep going until you hit the space bar to stop playing through your audio. So I'm just going to come up in my inspector, reset the volume here. I'm going to play through this, and I'm going to watch my meter down here and raise the levels of my clip until I'm around that minus 10 dB. It's going to fluctuate a bunch. That's okay. We just want to be around that minus 10 dB. So let's see what we got.
Here's the first and most likely the worst sample of audio that I'm going to give you. It's just recording directly in the 5D Mark IV, no external microphones, just recording right in there. It's probably going to sound pretty bad, but it's going to give you some good samples of...
All right, so I think that's pretty good. We boosted it up about 11 dB or so, and our levels were coming up into the red a little bit. That's okay. It doesn't mean we're peaking, but it also fluctuated down below the minus 15 down here. So I think we're in a good range. We're a good place to start with, right? And right now we've got a pretty big dynamic range for our audio, and we're going to work with that in a little bit. But after I set my levels and I make sure that it's in a good spot, the next thing that I start to think about is what order of operations or order of things do I want to happen in or to my clip? What are the orders of things I want to happen to my clip? Yeah, that's what I mean. So when we look in our mixer here, it's almost kind of set up in a way that makes a lot of sense for how we want to work through our clip. When it comes to our audio, we've got our clip, we bring it in Resolve, we set our levels, we've got a good starting point. The next thing is if we look in our track effects right here, that's going to be the next thing where our audio goes, right? We're going to have our audio, levels are good. It's going to hit the track effects for the signal order of the audio. So this is where you would want to think about maybe adding in some noise reduction. Now, in this particular clip, there's not a whole lot of noise. There's a little bit of background noise, and I'm just going to make my out point a little closer here so that you can hear it. So here's what we got, and listen to a little bit of the background noise. All right, it's not too much. It's really not that bad. But when it comes to background noise, we can use some voice isolation if you have the studio version to help take care of that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. Give it a second here. It's thinking. It's going to turn on the voice isolation. Now I want to open up my settings. I'm just going to close my inspector here. And I'm going to click the little icon right here. It says Controls. Now, because I added it or turned it on in the mixer under the track effects, this is being applied to the entire track. We can apply it to just the clip if we want by selecting the clip, opening the inspector, and turning on voice isolation. But if I have my audio separated out the way I talked about a little bit ago, this whole clip is in the same location, same microphone, and I'm going to have the same problems or same issues with my clips, right, that are in this particular track. So when it comes to voice isolation, a lot of times you might open it up and it's cranked all the way up to 100%. Now, I don't like using it at 100% unless it's absolutely necessary, because if you get rid of all of the background noise, it sounds a little odd. But what I do like to do is apply a little bit of voice isolation, because what that'll do is just bring the volume of the background noise down a little bit, which allows you to hear the dialogue a little bit better. So in this case, I'm going to start with it at 0 and just bring it up. Most of the time, I find that somewhere between 10 and 20 is good enough when I just want to make the background a little bit quieter. So let's just play through this. We're going to loop through this little part since that's where the background noise kind of is. And I'm going to raise it up and we're going to see how it sounds. So like 15 is good. I can still hear it, right? But it's not totally gone. So if I clear my in and out points now by using Option or Alt X, and I'm going to bring my voice isolation here. Let's just play through a little bit of it and see how it sounds.
So here's the first and most likely the worst sample of audio that I'm going to give you. It's just recording directly in the 5D Mark IV. No.
All right, so I think that's a little better, and I like it because I can still hear the birds in the background. I hope you guys can hear it clear enough out there as well. I actually dropped the voice isolation down to 10 because I want to hear a little bit of that ambient noise, right? It makes sense, but I also want my voice to be prominent. I want that to be the main thing. So voice isolation is a good way to get a little bit of noise reduction on there if you have studio. And if you don't have studio, the price of studio is worth it for voice isolation alone, let alone all of the other awesome stuff that you get when you have the studio version of Resolve. So that's my little plug. Buy studio. It's good if you edit videos often. So we're good on our voice isolation for that, a little bit of background noise reduction. Now, if you don't have studio, there are some other options for you. You can use the noise reduction effect. I found that it doesn't really do a great job, but it's there. You can use it and you can give it a try. The other thing that you can give a try, which is also in the free version, is the dialogue leveler. And Alex mentioned this morning a little bit too. The dialogue leveler is a great way. You can just turn it on, and it's like a one click thing if you want to just, get some good audio and, allow Resolve to do some of the balancing and stuff for you. And right down here, it's got background reduction. So that kind of helps a little bit get rid of some of the background noise. I don't think it does as good. It definitely doesn't do as good as voice isolation and some other tools that you might have. But it does do something, and it does work. And if you just want to drop something on there quick, this is a great way to do it and a great tool to use. And you can do it right in the free version if you've only got the free version. So I'm just going to turn that off for now since we're going to be working through some of the other tools. So we've got our track level effects, and you may want to use some of the other ones too. Now, if you don't see all of your track level effects here, you want to click on these three dots, come down to Visible Track Effects, and you'll see them all right here. By default, I only saw voice isolation and dialogue leveler, so I wanted to turn them all on. I want to see all the good stuff, right? So you can turn them on and see everything there. Now, if you don't see any of the other things in the mixer here, you can also make sure that they're turned on, and you can change the view of it and stuff like that if you want to. So we've got our level set. We've got our voice isolation on to get rid of the background noise just a little bit. What do we want to do next? So next, the things that we're going to do next depend on what you want to do. If you have plugins, third-party plugins that you like to use, and you're going to use some EQ, dynamics, noise reduction, other kinds of plugins, we could just set our order to just go straight to the effects. And if we look at the mixer right down here, we've got order. So if I click on there, I think by default it's set to go to the effects, then the dynamics, then the EQ. So we've got our audio signal, right? Where's it going? We've got our good level set. It's getting a little voice isolation. Now where's it going to go? We want it to go, when it comes to dialogue, if you're using the built-in tools to resolve here, what I like to do is go to the EQ, then the dynamics, and then the effects. Now, why do I like to use that? Well, I like to go to the EQ first so that I can remove anything that's like a problem area. Even if it's kind of minor and it doesn't sound too bad as we're getting started, I want to remove those because as we add dynamics, effects, and do other things with our audio, we may, or those little problem areas maybe become big problem areas. So if we kind of knock them back and take them out right in the beginning, it gives us, a better opportunity to just play with our audio without, those sounds we don't want becoming accentuated by something else that we're doing with our audio. So I like to go to the EQ first. Then I like to go to the dynamics so that we can work with our dynamic range a little bit. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes here about what that means and what we're trying to achieve by using our dynamic range. Then at the end of the process, I like to apply some effects, maybe a de-esser, maybe a multi-band compressor to kind of bring back some body to the dialogue and the vocal. So that's the way that typically I'm going to do it. Like I said, if you're using mostly plugins, you can go right to the effects first. And the order in which you do these things will change the way that your dialogue and audio sounds. So if you had effects, had dynamics, had EQ, and then you just came to the order here and you changed it, you picked a different one, it's going to make your clip sound different. May not be drastically different, or it might be drastically different. Just depends on what you did to your clip. So I recommend EQ, dynamics, then effects. So now we are going to jump into working with the EQ a little bit. Now, when it comes to the EQ, we can see it right down here in our mixer. And this is the track level EQ. So this is going to apply an EQ to everything on this particular track, in this case, audio 1. Now, you can rename your tracks and color them and do all that kind of stuff, which I recommend for keeping organized. Forgot to mention that in the beginning, but stay organized, use colors, name it so it makes sense. But we want to use the EQ on the track level. Now, you can use the EQ on a clip-by-clip basis. If you were to select a clip, open your inspector, you have this little EQ here. It's a little 4-band EQ, and that can help and come in handy. But I find if you've separated out your audio, like we already talked about, into locations, different kinds of microphones, different talent, and you have it separated out in the tracks, you can do it once, or do the EQ once, and it's going to apply to the whole track, and you don't have to go clip by clip, copy stuff. You don't have to do all that. You can just do it on a whole track level, and you're good to go. So we're not going to worry about the EQ in the inspector. I'm going to do it on a track level right here using the mixer EQ. So I'm going to double click on the mixer EQ, and real quick, a cool little tip here is if you just click once on any of the EQs or the dynamics, it'll turn it on and off. That's a pretty sweet feature that they added. I like that. So I'm just going to double click on the EQ. We're going to open this up here. And what we're going to do is start to work with this audio to find things that we don't like or that we might want to remove. So in my timeline, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I'm just going to set my clip to loop. So I'm going to set an out point after my first clip there. My looping is still turned on, so we can just loop our audio. So one of the first things that I like to do is apply a high pass filter. And a high-pass filter says, hey, at this point, allow everything to pass through, all the audio, all the frequencies, and below this point, don't let anything through. Close the gate, close the door. I don't want to hear any of that. So to do that, you can turn on band 1, and there's your high-pass filter. And what this is going to do is remove a lot of the low-end frequencies that kind of muddy up our audio, right? There's not a lot of information down here in these lower frequencies where we need to keep that stuff when it comes to dialogue. You got a bass guitar, you got some low end, thump into your music or something. Yeah, you need that low end. But for dialogue, you don't really need it. So let me play through the clip a little here, and you're going to be able to see the frequency analyzer, and it'll show you where we're cutting and what's passing through.
So here's the first and most likely the worst sample of audio that I'm going to give you.
So you see the two different colors there. Let me just mute this. I'm going to keep playing it so that we can see our graph here. So the light blue here is what we're actually hearing, the frequencies that are passing through the EQ. The grayed out version there, or grayed out graph, is what is being cut out. Now, when it comes to a high pass filter, you don't want to crank it up too much because you don't want to lose all the body to your vocal, right? The fullness of the vocal or the dialogue. So you can set this around 100 or so, a frequency of 100 hertz. That works out good. You may want to just listen to your clip and you can dial it up to where it sounds good. Certain microphones are going to need a little bit more, higher frequency than others. But in this case, because I recorded right into this little camera, the 5D Mark IV, I know there's really no low end on there, so I don't need to bring it up that high. I'm going to just leave it around 100. And that's just in case there's any, low end stuff kind of creeping in there. Like down in here, you'll see it'll cut that out. Now you can just grab your point. You could just drag this around. You don't need to know anything technical. You could just grab the point and drag it around. Now, the next thing that I like to do is, when it comes to dialogue, is just take off a little bit of the high end, a little bit of the top end frequencies. Now, most of the time, there's not much up here either, and it's okay to make a little cut there. So I'm going to turn on band 6 and grab it and just bring it back a little bit, right? We're at like 17.6K or whatever. So just a little bit. And if I play through my clip here, you can see we don't really come up there anyway on our frequencies, but I do that just to make sure if there's anything nasty up there that happens to pop in my clip, I'm good to go. I don't got to worry about it. So now we've got our high pass filter on this side. We've got a low pass filter on that side. Now to try and find areas of our clip that sound harsh to our ear. How do you know what's good and what's bad? Well, without getting into details of frequency ranges and numbers and what all these dials and all that mean, all we're going to do, and all you need to know to get started, is to grab a point. I'm going to start with point 3, bring it up, listen for something that sounds harsh to your ear. You're like, ooh, that doesn't sound good. And then we're going to want to make a cut and drop it a little. Because when it comes to EQ, you pretty much always want to make cuts before you ever think about boosting anything. And primarily, you only want to make cuts. You could boost here and there. Sometimes it needs it, depending on your clip. You need some clarity, things like that. But for the most part, we want to make cuts to remove anything that doesn't sound great. So we're going to play through this clip. I'm going to drag my point 3 up, drag it around, see what sounds harsh, and then we're going to make a reduction there. Now, another little tip is that we can see this is a bell-shaped curve. Now, if we want to affect more frequencies, we can use our middle mouse wheel coming in handy again. Scroll down, and it's going to make it wider. Scroll up, and it's going to make it sharper. So if we just make it a little bit sharper and affect fewer frequencies, we play through our clip, drag it around, we can listen for anything that sounds harsh. So let's play through and see what we got. Going to unmute this.
First and most likely the worst sample of audio that I'm going to give you. It's just recording directly in the 5D Mark IV, no external microphones, just recording right in there. It's probably going to sound pretty bad, but it's going to give you some good samples of audio that you can work with to try.
All right, so right there, it sounded a little harsh. Now, if I turn the EQ off, it may not be hugely noticeable, but as we move through the process, it may get accentuated, right? Now, you can use as many of these points as you need. You don't need to use all of them. You can use some of them, whatever works for your clip. And every clip, every microphone, every talent, every location, it's all going to be different on where you might need to adjust your EQ. So let's do one more point here. Point number 4.
Worst sample of audio that I'm going to give you. It's just recording directly in the 5D Mark IV, no external microphones, just recording right in there. It's probably going to sound pretty bad.
All right, so right there. Now I can come down to my point 4 instead of dragging it down up here so I don't go back and forth at all, I can grab my gain line here, just bring it down a little bit, and it's probably pretty good.
The worst sample of audio that I'm going to give you, it's just recording directly in the 5D Mark IV, no external microphone.
All right, so I think that's a little bit better, and it's taking care of anything that may become a problem. Now, after every part of the audio process, you want to double check your levels down here in the mixer and make sure you're still around that minus 10 dB. Okay, and if you're a little low, we can boost the gain up right here, and that's going to bring it back for us a little bit. So let me just take a look at that.
Just recording right in there, it's probably going to sound pretty bad, but it's going to give you some good samples of audio that you can work with.
All right, I boosted it just a little, and that's where we're going to go with the EQ for now. Now, you can use some of the presets. They've got a few in here that came, I think that's added in Resolve 19. So you can apply those if you want as a starting point, see how it works out. Next, we want to get into dynamics. And to open it, I'm just going to double click it. Now, what we're going to be talking about here is the compressor. And I'm going to go through this kind of quick here because I don't have a ton of time left. And I want to make sure I cover this stuff for you. So, dynamics. If you're not sure what to do with the compressor, you can turn it on and you could just apply a preset, right? Right at the top here, they've got a couple presets, dialogue compression, boom. You could start right there. Now, what the dynamics and compressor is going to do here is it's going to take our dynamic range of our audio. So we're going to be really loud up here. Not loud, but like we've got loud parts and we've got parts that are a little bit quieter. And what it's going to do is by using the compressor, it's going to bring the quiet part or the loud parts down a little bit. And then it's going to take the quiet parts and bring them up a little bit. So it's reducing the dynamic range of our audio. Now, why do we want to do that? We want to do that because if we are watching a video and you have this big dynamic range in your audio, the viewer is going to have to sit there with their remote control and be like, oh, it's too loud, turn it down. Oh, that part's too quiet, let me turn it up. You don't want to have to do that. You want to have some variation between the loud parts and the quiet parts, but you don't want the viewer to have to ride the remote control to boost and raise and lower the volume because that gets annoying, right? We don't want to do that. So the compressor is going to help us from getting too loud. And then we're going to use this makeup slider right here to help make the quiet parts a little bit louder. Now, how much you need to adjust these is going to depend on your clip, your location, and your talent. Again, it's going to affect different clips differently. So let's play through our clip here, see how this is working. And we're going to be able to tell that the compressor is working if this middle column right here under gain reduction, if that's lighting up. And then we always want to make sure we're taking a look at our output meter right here too, so that we are hovering around that minus 10 dB. And what we should notice is instead of having a swing from, say, minus 15 to minus 5, maybe we're only swinging from minus 12 to minus 9 or 8. And we're reducing the dynamic range. So let's play through and just see what we got.
To try and edit it and make it sound better. So here's the first and most likely the worst sample of audio that I'm going to give you. It's just recording directly in the 5D Mark IV, no external microphones, just recording right in there. It's probably going to sound pretty bad, but it's going to give you some good samples of audio that you can work.
Okay, so I think that's pretty good. We noticed it was kind of hovering around that minus 10 a little bit better, right? It wasn't fluctuating as much, which is what we want. Now, if you needed to adjust the compressor at all to have it start earlier, you could just take your threshold and drop it back. And this is the dB level at which it's going to start to kick in. So we're around 24 or whatever. We'll leave it there, 25. For your ratio, that just says how much do we want to, reduce the louder parts of our audio. Generally for dialogue, you want to go somewhere between 2 to 1 and 3 to 1, and that should work out just fine. You can go a little bit more if you need to, but 2 to 1 is a good rule of thumb. The knee just says, do I want you to ease into the compressor, or do I want the audio to ease into the compressor, or do I want it to go in there harsh? So if you lower it down, this becomes more of a point here. If I move it up there to 100, it gradually, applies the compressor. So you could just double click any one of these knobs, reset them. This was set around 25. I think that's a good spot to leave it. So our levels are looking pretty good. Now, when it comes to how much compressor to apply, when you look at this middle graph here, you kind of don't want it to go too much below minus 6 dB. If you're hitting that minus 6, that's all right. That's pretty good. A little over here and there, no problem. But you don't want to crush it all the way down because then it's going to sound compressed. It's not going to sound good, right? So that's how you kind of use the compressor. Start with a preset if you're not sure what to do. And if you want to know more about it, check out this video again or check out some of my other videos because I've got lots of them on all this stuff. Now, when we boosted up the makeup here, it did make some of those quiet parts a little bit louder, right? Where we kind of reduce the background noise a little bit. And if we look at our yellow line here, we can see that originally our audio came right down to 0 dB here, but now it's not quite hitting 0 dB. So what I like to do is turn on the expander, and that's just going to add a point at which the audio gets quieter quicker. And it's, if you had like a noisy background area between the words and phrases, like when I'm talking, then I stop, then I talk again. In those quiet parts, the expander would help make those parts a little bit quieter there and just kind of bring down some of that background noise. And we can see it's active because we see the first meter here lit up. So I'm going to just leave it at the default settings now, and that should help make a difference. Let's just play through and see if we can hear any difference.
And most likely the worst sample of audio that I'm going to give you, it's just recording directly in the 5D Mark IV, no external microphones, just recording right in.
All right, so I think that's doing pretty good, right? We can dial back our threshold a little bit. I think that's pretty good. So a lot of these changes are going to be very subtle, and you're going to notice them more with certain clips versus other clips, right? Now, this clip may never sound great because it was recorded directly into the camera, and the 5D Mark IV doesn't have a great internal microphone, right? It's going to sound a lot better when you start to look at some of my other examples. You can work through those and use the same process just to see what you could do with those clips and see how different microphones react to the changes you might make with any of these tools. So let's close our dynamics for now. Now, this dialogue sounds a little thin because of just recording directly into the camera. So how do we kind of bring back a little bit of fullness to that, right? Because if we hear it,
and most likely the worst sample of audio that I'm going to give you, it's just
it's kind of thin, right? We can hear it. It's at least clear, right? But it's kind of thin. So there's an effect that I like to use that helps bring back the fullness of a dialogue, maybe because we made a cut on the EQ and it pulled out some of the fullness, or maybe because I just didn't have any other microphone and I had to run and gun it with the microphone in the camera. So I like to use the multi-band compressor. So we are going to come to our mixer, come to our effects, click on the plus. We're going to come down to dynamics, Fairlight effects, and multi-band compressor. Now, you can use third-party plugins. There's tons of them. They work really good. And if you had third-party plugins, you would just go to VST, and boom, there's all your third-party stuff. So I'm going to use the multi-band compressor now. And this is what the multi-band compressor looks like. And essentially what it does is it applies compression, or a compressor, to 4 different bands, frequency ranges, I should say, 4 different frequency ranges. And by default, you can see it's set up from 0 to 90, 90 to 370, 370 to 5700, and then above 5700. So we want to make some adjustments here. We want a little more fullness to our dialogue, which is going to be in our lower frequency ranges. Now, we shouldn't hear anything below 100, right? Because we made a cut on the EQ, so we shouldn't really be hearing any of that. Our mid-range frequencies here, or our low mids, we're going to want to bring this up a little bit. And I'm going to play through the clip, and we're going to adjust this while we're listening. And then we're going to want to boost this up a little bit so we get a little bit of that fullness back. And then we're also going to want to adjust this here, and I'll explain what I do after I do it. Now, you don't have to know what all these knobs, buttons, and dials do down here other than the gain one. The gain is the one that's going to allow us to boost or reduce the particular frequency range. So I'm just going to reset that. Let's go ahead and play through this and make some adjustments. Then I'll talk about what I did after I make those adjustments.
So here's the first and most likely the worst sample of audio that I'm going to give you. It's just recording directly in the 5D Mark IV, no external microphones, just recording right in there. It's probably going to sound pretty bad, but it's going to give you some good samples of audio that you can work with to try and edit it and make it sound better. So here's the first and most likely the worst sample of audio that I'm going to give you. It's just recording directly in the 5D Mark IV, no external microphones, just recording right in there. It's probably going to sound pretty bad, but it's going to give you some good samples of audio that you can work with.
All right, so made a few changes there. I did adjust the low end down to 78 just to make sure we're grabbing everything. Now, the low mids, I put it up to about 402. If I go a little higher than that, then it starts to get a little boxiness in there, and I don't want to hear that. But boosting this range here for this microphone is what brought back some of the fullness. So let me just turn it on and off, and you can hear the difference.
To try and edit it and make it sound better.
and then we'll turn it on in a second.
So here's the first and most likely the worst sample of audio that I'm going to...
Okay, so if we didn't make a little cut in our EQ, some of those problem areas might have gotten accentuated by this. And even still, we may need to go back to the EQ and just fine tune it a little bit. But this kind of helped bring back some of the fullness and the body of the dialogue, right? So it just sounds a little fuller. It doesn't sound so thin. Now, the mid-range here, a lot of the dialogue will live between, 500, 800 to like 3K. So that's kind of what this range represents. You can boost it or lower it if you need to. And then the high ends, I just give it a little boost just to add a little bit of crispiness to it and a little bit of clarity, right? Now, if I look at my output meter here, I want to make sure, again, I'm around that minus 10 dB. I can use my gain right here to boost it up if I need it. Let's see if we need it.
To give you, it's just recording directly in the 5D Mark IV, no external microphones, just recording right in there. It's probably going to sound pretty...
All right, so a slight boost. Boom. I think we're good. It makes a good difference there, in my opinion. And when you adjust this, it can work out really good on any kind of clip, right? So multiband compressor, it's a good effect to apply on your clip to help refine the dialogue of your particular clip. The last thing that I typically apply on to my dialogue tracks is the de-esser. So if I click effects, come down to restoration, Fairlight effects, and we have de-esser. I like to start with a preset, and what this effect does is just gets rid of some of those harsh those S sounds, helps get rid of that. So I like to start with male ESS. You can pick the one that applies to you. And then I like to come down to frequency range, just click this guy because I don't need to affect as many frequencies, reduce it a little bit, and then I'll play through my clip and see if we're catching any of the harsh S's by looking for this reduction meter and see if that is being lit up or activated.
Bad, but it's going to give you some good samples of audio that you can work with to try and edit it and make it sound better. So here's the first and...
Okay, you could change whether it works slow, medium, or fast. So you only need a little bit of this. Don't need a lot of it. Depending on your clip, you may need a lot. But I recommend always checking it out and adding a little de-esser on there because that'll just help sweeten it up a little bit. So that is the main process of going through a dialogue clip there, what I would do, the process I would go through. Now, one thing I do want to mention is that I should have mentioned this back at setting levels, but sometimes people like to normalize your audio, right? So it's kind of like setting your levels automatically. Resolve will do the work for you. So if you were to select your clip, right-click, come down to normalize audio levels, you'd get a dialog box that I can't move. That looks like this. So we've got different ways to normalize our audio. A lot of times I would use sample peak program and it'll target it around that minus 9 dB and you can go hit normalize. I like to do it manually just because I got more control over what it's doing. But one thing I do want to note, let's say you're like, I'm making videos for YouTube. I'm just going to come down and use the YouTube normalization. Well, the problem with that is that it sets the target to be a max of minus 1 dB on our meters and a target loudness of minus 14. Now, that's okay if you only have one dialogue track. There's no differences. There's no music. There's no sound effects. There's no nothing else. Go ahead and do that. That's fine. But if you have more than one track with different audio, I don't recommend using this because you're probably going to be too loud, and YouTube, once you upload your video, is going to end up squashing it down if you made your other clips loud enough and all that stuff. So I like to set my dialogue at that minus 10 dB and not like this to, minus 2 dB. You may have heard that or seen videos on that, like, oh, set your dialogue to minus 2 dB and you're good to go. But not when you have a whole bunch of other sound stuff going on. You've got music, sound effects, and other things happening because it's probably going to be too loud for YouTube. What you want to do is set your dialogue at the minus 10 dB. Aim for that. Set your sound effects and your music the way you want. And then at the end of all of your audio editing, you want to check the overall loudness for your entire video, which is a measure of all of your audio together. So, for example, for YouTube, you can have a maximum allowable loudness limit of minus 14 LUFS. Now, LUFS is not the same as dB, looking on my meter. Different thing, right? So you would want to check your loudness levels at the end of your whole audio editing process. And I don't think I have time to cover it now. I would love to. It's really cool just to make sure that everything's good. You can sweeten up your audio at the very end of the process by doing some mastering, adding just a touch of little EQ, bringing all of your audio up a little bit so that it's almost up to that maximum allowable limit for YouTube, Netflix, Disney Plus, whatever it is. So make sure you don't go over, but you can really fine tune everything once you get to mastering, which is you do all your other audio work, then we check the loudness, and then we master everything so it sounds really good all together as a whole.
Somebody said in chat that this was like an audio masterclass, and I totally agree. This is really, really great, man. Thank you so much for all of the wisdom. There are going to be so many people that make better videos, better sounding videos because of this presentation, man. So cool.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yep. Get some good audio. You got to have good audio. Got it.
Right. That's right, man. That was next level, man. Okay, so we have some questions. Here it is from Paula. Jason, I shoot interviews in bar environments a lot. What would be the best way to separate or at least lower background music from voice audio when they're all on the same track? I'm using DJI mics.
Right. So if, I don't know if you have multiple people or if it's just a single person that you're recording, obviously get the microphone as close as you can to the talent, because that's going to allow you to lower the overall levels of, your recording device, your camera, whatever it might be, which should hopefully help, limit some of the background noise. Obviously you're still going to get it, but, that's where something like voice isolation is going to do some awesome work and kick some butt for you, because I've tried it out where I put music on around me. I film myself, turn on some voice isolation, and literally it like takes the music out. Yeah, so I wouldn't recommend that you cut it all the way out, because then it's going to just seem a little odd that there's no environmental sound. But like I showed in, this little class here, just put on 10, 20%. Whatever it is that brings that background music or bar sound, the talking, whatever, it brings it back a little bit. And I'm surprised at how well voice isolation does with that kind of stuff. It really leaves the voice, makes it prominent, and can just lower down that background, noise, music, whatever it is, just by turning that one dial. It's like magic. It's magic.
Yeah, it is. It's seriously powerful. Yeah, that's great. All right. Next question. There's a lot of sound effects with many confusing names and categories. Could you show us perhaps your sound library files to get an idea of different names of sound effects, musical cues, and how to organize them? So any tips on organizing names of sound effects and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I agree. A lot of times the sound effects are not named well. I could just show you what I've got. If you want to show my screen here. I did create like a couple sound libraries. I haven't used them too much, but what I do most of the time is I have power bins set up. So let me just turn on the power bins. Go back in the edit page, so I just got a little more room. So in my power bins, I just set it up here so that I can see it in all of my projects. I've got a sound effects folder, and then I get some from Motion Ray Audio, Epidemic Sound. I made some of my own that may be available at some time in the future. Got Storyblocks Art List. So what I do is I'll just put all of my sound effects in there, and it's kind of hard to know what they all are. A lot of times, depending on the service you're getting them from, they do have a little bit of a name that kind of makes a little more sense. Some services make more sense than others. But I kind of know what I've downloaded and what I've got, even though I've got a ton of them. I mean, there's just a ton of stuff. So I'll just pick one of the places I got stuff. If I'm looking for something, I'll be like, I'm going to try this. Crushed Stones. I don't know. Hey, that sounds good. So sometimes they're named good, but sometimes they're not. And I just kind of, go through my libraries and see what I could find. I don't really have a good way to organize it, because I could make folders and do all that, but a lot of times when I'm looking for sound effects, it's quick and dirty. I'm jumping on a website. I'm like, okay, I want, a screeching car, screeching tires. Find it, boom, download it. I at least put it in the power bin as opposed to just in my individual project folders. But I utilize power bins for all of my graphics, overlays, things I use all the time, my music. it's all, here too. So all the music, different companies, whatever, jump in there, boom, there's like all my music, and I just keep adding to it. So I just kind of search through and look for stuff. And if I can't find what I'm looking for quick, I go back to the website and just search, because it's pretty good at, finding stuff when I'm like, oh, I need a whoosh that has a sword and an explosion. I don't know. So yeah.
Nice.
I don't know if that helps anything, but that's what
I think that's helpful. I think setting up the power bends is a great way to do that.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go on to our next question here. What's your best method? What's your best method for removing bad wind noise?
Bad wind noise. First, I would do what I can when you're filming it, if possible. Use a dead cat or whatever. But I know there's times nothing you can do about it. It's in there, and you got to take care of it. Again, I call on voice isolation. It's going to do the best job at getting rid of some of that stuff. The noise reduction effect that's in Resolve, I haven't had much good luck with it over the years. I don't know. I haven't gotten it to work well. I'm sure it does in certain situations, but voice isolation is going to be the way to go. And if you have the free version, you can try the dialogue leveler and see if that background noise tool works. The other thing that I would try is using an expander or a gate that's in the dynamics, because that can help reduce some of the noise that you have below a certain dB level. Although it's definitely not going to do as good a job as something like voice isolation. Voice isolation is going to do the best for you. And there are some third-party plugins that you can get that do the same thing, that are very similar to voice isolation. But honestly, if you're editing videos and you don't have Studio yet, it's just worth it to buy Studio and have the voice isolation built in, native. You don't got to worry about an effect or a plugin. It's there, and then you get everything else that comes with Studio too. So
there are so many reasons to get the paid version of Resolve. Like in each little reason is worth the price of Resolve Studio, and voice isolation is definitely one of those things.
Yeah,
I mean,
it just takes care of everything so well. It's so easy, one dial.
Yeah. All right. Do you use 32-bit recorders for off-camera recording? If so, what recorders would you recommend?
So far, I do not. I actually just got my first microphone that records in 32-bit float. It's a Sennheiser. So I'm just getting into like the 32-bit float stuff, playing with it, and I'm going to be making some videos about it. But right now, I don't have anything that records in 32-bit float. I generally record right into my computer for my, audio, my talking head, videos and stuff. I'm recording the 5D Mark IV with, whatever microphone if I'm out and about, or on the C100 here. Again, just record directly in the camera, and none of that stuff, nor any of the other microphones and stuff I have record in 32-bit float yet. So looking forward to getting into, this new microphone I picked up and playing with the 32-bit float. But the advantage there is that you can record a huge dynamic range. So if I was talking normal and I'm outside and then I'm watching fireworks and there's a loud explosion right next to me, in theory, that 32-bit float's going to be able to record all of that from the quiet to the loud. You're not going to peak out and lose audio. I mean, you still have to set your levels and stuff like that. But that's the advantage of 32-bit float is it records more dynamic range, so you've got more to work with when you get back into post. So I'm going to be getting into it.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, I think we have time for maybe a couple more questions here.
Yeah.
Should I do my audio adjustments for a project after completing my heavy edits and cuts? If I do them as I go, it seems to have problems.
Yeah, so I think it could go either way. A good way to do it is come up with like presets for things, kind of like Alex talked about in his session this morning. That's going to help speed up your just applying the effects and stuff, or creating a whole project, that's already all set up. But a lot of times, as long as it's not too bad, I'll just edit my video and then I'll do the audio work after I've edited together the video. There's always some audio editing you have to do at the end anyway, because if you're adding sound effects or music, you want to blend things together, use your faders to kind of blend them, maybe even adjust levels to sound effects at the end so it, fits good with the video. So a lot of times that's what I do is I'll edit the video and then do my audio editing. The exception is if I put it in there and it's too quiet. A lot of times I'll set the levels real quick just so it's loud enough I can hear it. Or if it's something that's just sounding bad, like a particular frequency is like killing my ears. It's just whatever. The setup, had something that didn't sound good. I'll drop that out, using the EQ. And then just so it's good enough that I can edit the video portion, and then I'll work on, the audio afterwards. So, yeah.
Nice. All right. Yeah, let's do one more.
All right, let's do it.
All right. Best place for sound effects, free ones or premium ones? I find Resolve's included library underwhelming / difficult to use.
Yeah, I wish the free library that you could download was a little bit more user-friendly. But I mean, you saw a minute ago where I get like my sound effects and music from. I use like a bunch of the online services, Audio Artlist, Epidemic Sound, Storyblocks, Motion Array. They all have great stuff. Really, any one of them has more than you need from what I've found. Like I go through, phases where I use different ones. Probably Artlist is the one that I've used the most because I've been working with them the longest and was even using that before I was working with them. Motion Array has good freebies. If you want to sign up for a free account there, you can get freebies there. I did that for a long time before I ever had a paid account there. But really any of the services I feel like are pretty good nowadays. They all got high quality music, sound effects. It just depends on what kind of stuff do you want, what interface do you like, although they're all fairly similar now. So, it's really just look around, see what you like, but they're all pretty good from what I've seen in the ones that I've used. So
yeah, it's definitely changed a lot in the last few years. It's a lot easier to get high quality stock media. It's really nice.
Yeah, there used to be a bigger difference, and some were just hard interfaces to navigate and find stuff, but it's come a long way. So I think they're all pretty good. All the big names you've heard of, they're all pretty good nowadays.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, hey, Jason, this has been amazing, man. Thank you so much for guiding us through this audio ocean. And it's been wonderful, man. You did a great job.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me on this year. It was a lot of fun. And if you guys are sticking around for Saturday night, it's night for me in the evening for the VIP session or whatever it is. That's going to be fun. We're talking about a lot of other cool stuff and things you can do with your audio. So tune into that if you didn't sign up yet.
Hey. Wonderful. All right. Well, Jason, we're going to let you go, man. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot. We'll see you. Take care.